Welcome to the Proud Psychologist podcast, where we look at all things mental health. Brought to you by me, Carol, an LGBTQ coaching psychologist. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Proud Psychologist. Today's episode is looking at what we can learn from the Disney Pixar film Turning Red. This is a coming-of-age film set in Canada following a 13-year-old girl as she navigates the pools of friends and family, as well as the emotional roller coaster that is teen life. With that said, there's plenty of stuff here that speaks to the struggles of many adults, and we can learn a lot from it as adults. I won't be running through the whole story plot, but there will be spoilers, so if you haven't seen the film but might like to, consider whether to continue with this episode right now. Before we get started, it has been a fair while since the last episode, and I do apologise for that. This was always meant to be a fortnightly podcast, but life got busy, as it tends to do, and I admit that my inspiration for this really dried up. The Inside Out episode proved to be popular, and I'm going to see if similar episodes, like this one, follow the same pattern. So please do let me know what you think after listening to this. I will see what frequency of episodes is sustainable, and I appreciate your patience while I figure this out. With all of that done, let's get on with the episode. Now, Turning Red introduces us to 13-year-old Maylin, most commonly referred to just as May, who routinely bends over backwards to please and satisfy her parents, though most noticeably, this is all directed at her mum, Ming. She's a high achiever at school and fulfills many responsibilities around the home and the family temple because it gets her praise and positive recognition from Ming. Her dad, Jin, is obviously proud of her as well, but his support is clearly unconditional, even if it is muted at times when speaking up would lead to more conflict. Ming's approval is the thing May really is working for. Ming clearly isn't interested in who May is, what she likes, and what she values, which is crushing for May. This is characteristic of an enmeshed relationship, actually. Enmeshment happens when two people have such poor boundaries with each other that one's individuality is subsumed by the other. Only the feelings, needs, values, views, etc. of one person matter in this kind of relationship. In Turning Red, May doesn't get to have her own feelings and needs, because Ming's take precedence. This is brilliantly demonstrated in a couple of instances. One, where May tries to tell her mum about the band she and her friends are big fans of, but Ming's reaction is to dismiss and criticise both the band and May's friends without letting May speak. The other example is when Ming cottons on to the fact that May has developed a crush on a guy. Instead of respecting her daughter as her own person with her own feelings and autonomy, Ming unleashes her fury on the guy in question at his workplace, a shop, and in doing so humiliates May. She humiliates May further by showing him and the rest of the people in the shop some drawings of May's that depict her and this guy kissing. What Ming is doing in these instances, completely unintentionally, is to communicate to May that her interests, feelings, friends, etc. are only okay if they align with Ming's. May's friends acknowledge the wonky boundaries that May has with her family when they say to each other, "Oh, she's so brainwashed," after being blown off yet again to do the daily housework. Teenage years are characterised by a need to differentiate from the family. Up to this point, a child's sense of self is tied to the family, and it's at that adolescent point that things start to shift. It's a necessary part of human development, and friends do take on more importance at this point. The trying on of different identities, fashion styles, music tastes, hobbies, and other activities is all part and parcel of it. I think we all know of someone or are someone who, as an adult, still values some of the things they explored as a teenager. It's just that the adult version has more balance with other things. Maybe they recognise that they aren't as die-hard about it as they were as a teenager. One of the difficult things for parents about this stage of life is that their child can completely change their tastes, views, etc. in ways that sit directly opposite those of the parents, and they can feel like they don't recognise or can't connect with their kid anymore. Sometimes this phase is characterised by deliberate rebellion and opposition, but a lot of the time it's just them trying to find their own identity, much like May does in the film. This transition from undifferentiated child to differentiated teenager can be really tricky. When there is enmeshment between the teenager and one or both parents, as May finds out, it can be particularly challenging. Ming does struggle a lot with seeing May engaging in things that she doesn't align with, to the point of being incredibly critical and harsh about it. In the wake of being humiliated in front of her crush and the shoppers, May experiences a few different emotions, including anger and embarrassment. We see her cycling through these in her room while she paces up and down before bed. She then wakes up the next morning as a giant red panda. Of course, she freaks out. How has this happened? What does she do now? And more questions fill her head. She eventually takes some slow, deep breaths and finds that this helps her return back to her human form. However, the strong feelings of joy and relief that she experiences after being back as a human trigger her back into the red panda form. This time, May uses a couple of hairbrushes to provide some soothing physical sensations, as well as doing some slow, deep breathing, and she's human again. Here, she's unlocked the key to her staying human. Avoid strong feelings and keep the emotional experience on an even keel. Doesn't seem to matter whether we would label those feelings as positive or negative. What May is experiencing here is basically emotion dysregulation, and then the power of being able to regulate herself. Her uncontrolled transformations into the red panda are a metaphor for experiencing states of emotion dysregulation because her emotions are so strong that she doesn't know how to handle them. The slow deep breathing and the self-soothing with the hairbrushes are examples of grounding techniques which we utilise to help us get to a state where we are better able to cope with what's going on. They are emotion regulation tools. As the story goes on, it becomes clear that Jin and Ming both knew May would encounter this problem with the uncontrolled red panda transformations, because it runs in the family and has been passed on to May from Ming and her family. May is frustrated that they didn't warn her, but Ming clearly has a lot of shame around her experience of her own red panda. We are drip-fed information about Ming's red panda from a few different characters throughout the film, but essentially it boils down to her not being able to control it and having hurt someone close to her. When we look at this in terms of emotion regulation, it becomes very clear that Ming isn't skilled in emotion regulation herself, instead opting to disown and lock away the dysregulated states, and so couldn't actually help May prepare for or learn how to regulate her emotions, even though she really wanted to. It's a sad realisation to have that we can't help a loved one with something because we aren't able to do it ourselves. Turning red doesn't stop there though, and I'm really glad that it doesn't. It looks beyond self-regulation and actually addresses the often overlooked co-regulation. Co-regulation is basically the name we use for times when people come together to help one or more of them achieve a state of emotion regulation. May experiences this co-regulation for the first time with her friends. When they first find out about her red panda transformations, they are very quick to accept her, regardless of whether she's in human or red panda form. She tries to tell them to leave her alone, but instead they hug her and say, "We love you, May. You're our girl, no matter what. Yeah, panda or no panda." There's a few things going on here. The hugging, which releases oxytocin, the bonding chemical, helps with feeling connected, supported and calmer. Hearing her friends' acceptance and support of her at a time when she's struggling to accept herself proves to be a powerful thing for May too. On top of all of that, sometimes when people are feeling dysregulated, aren't accepting themselves, and they tell others to leave them alone, that's actually the last thing they want. It can be hugely impactful to have people show up for us, like Miriam, Priya and Abby did for May in this scene. Because the unspoken message that they'll always be there can set in without too much opposition from the conscious mind. Being accepted, panda or no panda, is a wonderfully validating thing too. Now, I do need to put a disclaimer in here, because while these are the things which worked for May, we are all different, and how one person responds could well differ from how others would. Some people, for example, who can't accept words of affirmation like that, and might even sit there and argue against them. It is totally counterproductive to spend time arguing with someone about whether you really do accept them, or whether you're just saying it to make them feel better, as an example. So, successful co-regulation can look different for different people. Asking someone what they need, what helps them, and what isn't helpful are all great for beginning to understand how to help someone in particular to regulate. May shows us that we can use our recollections and full re-experiencing of moments which helped us tap into feelings of being safe enough, validated, accepted, loved, connected, cared for, as ways to stay regulated when faced with strong emotions. After that scene, she didn't need to physically be with her friends in order to feel the benefits of those connections. I am hesitant to label this as either self-regulation or co-regulation, because neither feels quite right to me. The other people are key to it, but in that moment it is the individual who is re-experiencing the moment and accessing those feelings. I think where I sit on this is it's a delicious combination of the two, a blending of them. Regardless, in this film, May and her friends show us the journey from being intensely dysregulated to exploring self-regulation, to discovering co-regulation, and then realising that regulating people and moments can be recalled to make it easier to handle things going on in the present moment. A lot of adults struggle with one or more aspects of this, and Turning Red offers examples of things to try, as well as normalising the whole process of experiencing strong dysregulating emotions and managing them through various approaches, both on our own and with others. Ming hadn't learned to manage her emotions and instead opts to lock away the dysregulated parts of her. This is shown to be the way of coping that previous generations had adopted too, and the film is careful not to disparage it. What Turning Red does do, and I fucking love it, is offer up learning how to regulate your emotions as an accessible alternative. The message here is very much one of personal autonomy and the real possibility of learning how to manage your emotions if you wish to. That is not the same as saying that locking up and disowning the dysregulated parts of yourself is healthy. It's just acknowledging that personal autonomy means that we get to choose. And speaking of personal autonomy, this is the perfect opportunity to revisit the topic of Ming and May's enmeshed relationship. Joyfully, they go on a whole journey with a massive conflict when May stops squashing her own interests down and instead stands up to her mum. Ming does eventually hear May, and they manage to reach a point where both are regarded and respected as autonomous individuals with their own valid feelings and experiences. It's a very heartwarming story arc that they go on, and it provides a feeling of hope. Obviously, a film just under 2 hours, where the enmeshment isn't the main focus, is not going to be offering a realistic time frame or depiction of the work involved in turning that around. But I think it does a good job of showing that it can be done with an overview of how the journey could look. I.e., it won't be conflict-free, and both sides do need to meet in the middle. So that's my analysis of the relationship between Ming and May, and May's journey through the film Turning Red by Disney Pixar. I would love to hear your thoughts on this, so please do contact me with your comments and whether this style of episode works for you. You can find my contact details, etc. in the episode description. I do have some other films lined up to do similar things with. If you want me to cover a particular film or TV show, please do let me know. I will entertain and look into all suggested options. So, till next time, take it easy.